I find the very center of my paper. Are we listening? I find the very center of my paper. I'm going to put a little dot. Now, that dot is going to be right here on my hand. See that? So I put my hand right there, and I can spread my fingers if I want to, or I can put my hand closed if I want to. Okay? And you're going to trace around your hand. I'm taking my time. I'm not rushing. And I stop. I'm not closing this. I keep this open. Now I find my dot. I keep my dot right here. Also, look, I have overlapping that's happening. I find my dot. I put it back on my dot on the paper. Overlapping. Drawing another hand. It's okay if I go off the paper. You guys won't because your hand isn't as big as mine. I go like this. I'm spinning my paper as I go, right? I'm spinning my paper as I go. Overlapping. I'm going to spin my paper a little bit. I find my dot. I line it up with my dot on my hand. What do I do next? What do I do next after that? I spin it. I find the dot, line the dots up, trace my hand again, taking my time. I'm gonna see who's quietest. I spin it one more time, dot to dot, trace. And I think I want a few more petals here, so I'm going to do it one more time, dot to dot. Then I trace, and we're going to paint it later. And you've got a nice big flower, correct? Alright, so we have our flower that we drew by tracing our hand, and now what we're going to do first is just paint with water. So we want to just do, you don't want to flood it, you just want to do a little bit of water on each petal and all over the flower. It shouldn't be flooded, it should just be damp where you're making the paper shiny. And you don't want to go outside the lines really. You just want to kind of keep the water inside your lines and inside your lines of your petals, and just go brush some water, make it damp all over the flower. So it shouldn't drip at all when you lift the paper up. It shouldn't be dripping like it's puddled. It shouldn't be dripping at all. It should just be shiny paper just where the flower is. Alright, now we're going to use our 3 primary colors, and I want you to think about these are the 3 colors that create all of the colors of the rainbow, all of the colors in my paint palette. You mix these 3 colors together to create all the colors. So those 3 colors, you can't make those colors. You can't mix to make them. You can only use them from the paint palette. So we've got red, yellow, and blue that you can't mix to make. And they actually, if you mix red and yellow together, or blue and yellow, or red and blue, that makes all of the colors in the rainbow. So for the beginning, I want to color the inside of my flower, just the center, with yellow. And I pet the paint a lot so that the yellow color is really bright and rich. And that would be called a high value color, because yellow is very weak, so we need to make sure that that color is so light that we put it on there a lot, nice and thick, so it's a real bright, high value color. So I did it in a starburst to go along with the pattern of my flower. Everything's shooting outward like sun rays or like flower petals. So when I put my paint down, my brush does the same thing. Now, when I get my next color, I want to make sure I rinse my paintbrush out really well. And now I'm going to go with my next color, which is red. This is my other primary color. And I'm not going to color into the yellow and overlap and take over the yellow with red. I'm just going to put it down next to the yellow. And I'm going to brush it into a starburst pattern. I'm not going to go past my petals. I want one more color for the edge of my petals. So I want to leave the edge of my petals all the way around still there. We're doing 3 colors on this flower, so we want to make sure that we leave room for all 3 colors on our petals, on each individual petal. And again, I'm doing a starburst or a sunburst or like a firework or even like a flower, how the petals shoot outward from the center. That's how you want to paint on there. And once more, I'm not covering up my yellow. I'm putting the red next to the yellow, and then that yellow is going to bleed into the red, and the red's going to bleed into the yellow, and it's going to create a color. And that color that it creates on its own is orange. And those colors bleed in together because we started off with a wet flower. We painted with water first. So I'm going to rinse my paintbrush out really good, and now I'm going to get the blue. That's my third primary color and last primary color. I'm going to get that blue, and I'm going to paint that on the remainder of my petals. And I'm going to start from the outside of the petal in, because my paintbrush is shaped like a petal, and it works really well if I go from the outside in. And again, I'm not painting on top of the red. I'm putting it down next to the red so that they can bleed together. So that blue and that red will bleed together, and that will create another color, and that color that it creates is purple or violet. Again, we're doing a sunburst from the center out to paint just the edges, what's left of our petals, so that we have a 3-color flower, and it's our 3 primary colors, yellow, red, and blue. These are the 3 colors that make all of the colors that exist. What I'm doing here is I went back just a little bit to help it because it wasn't bleeding a lot, so I just went and I brushed in just a tiny bit into the red from the blue, and I went from the blue into the red, not the red into the blue, and I just did a tiny bit so it'll have that sunburst, firework burst, or flower petal game. Okay, so I'm painting all the white paper. Who's talking? I'm painting all the white paper with water. Now I'm using a very light green. That means that it's not, who's listening, who's looking up here, who's pausing and just looking and not painting. So I'm using a little bit of green. I'm not going to overuse the green because I want it to be light. See how it's light? And I want to cover in all of the background. Even all the white paper is getting this green. Does everybody get me? So, and look how I'm going to be very careful going in on my flower. So I don't make the flower green. Understand? I don't need a squeaky chair. Who's quietest? Who's sitting correctly in their seat? Who's going to get a pocket pet today? Now, if you notice, I'm going all the way around with the green first. Does everybody see that? Let's see, who's not talking, who's paying attention, who's not playing with their water or their paintbrush, who's listening and looking up here and waiting for Miss Leash to finish. Who's talking? Who's still talking? Alright, now I have green all the way around. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse my brush out really good. Really, 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 really good. I'm not jamming my brush down in there. I'm just rinsing it really good. Wiping it on the bucket. Getting some yellow next. And I'm just going to do a little bit of yellow in my leaves. Not all over my leaves, just highlighting my leaves. Am I coloring the whole leaf in with yellow? No, I'm just putting some stripes into it. When I go to get more, I worked into the green, my brush is green yellow, lime green. So when I go to get more yellow, what do?
Wash it out.
I wash it out. So I'm going to get a little bit more yellow. And wherever I think there's leaves, I'm just going to trace around them on either side. Rinse my brush out before I get more yellow so that my yellow stays clean. And dab a few more times with the yellow. Are my leaves all yellow? No, they're just highlighted with some bright yellow stripes. Just on the outside. One stroke, that's it. Understand? Do I rinse my brush out in between colors? Yes, I always rinse my brush out in between colors.